your organization. And when we get in the tool today, you'll see how Knoa can provide you some other metrics that may help bring to light how much time is wasted in the password reset security issue space that you have with your ERP system. Process improvements, again, you can see here 50% of functionality is not used by post-go-live support. I'm going to show some examples there. SAP spend, I really like talking about this one. There's a lot of times where people right now are looking at Fiori, they're looking at Personas, they're looking at UI5. They're looking at different things that they want to implement within their solution, but they really don't have data to justify, is the spend, should I do the spend now? Am I getting all the value out of the spend once I implement the new tool? So again, I'll focus on some of those. And then the last one, user enablement. And I on this one, 30% of issues by users could be solved by the users if they have the right information at the right time. And a lot of the things that I think you'll see is people don't know when to give the right information to the users at the right time, which then causes delays and a response back and forth between support. So moving on to starting with the problem. So the first thing when you start to use Knoa is, I really think what I see a lot of times with our current customer base, with people that are thinking about using Knoa, and they're really focused on, I want value, I want to get dollars back, I really want a value statement, show me the value of Knoa. I very often see that we struggle with having a problem statement that has dollars associated. And the examples that I like to use is the temporary labor, and I'm going to show you this one here in a second. But if you think about temporary labor, and it's a group of people that you have in your organization, they're there to help supplement your day-to-day staff. Very often, we don't spend a lot of time evaluating or understanding what those temporary laborers are doing. So are they doing repetitive tasks? Are they doing things that maybe are in SAP that someone else should be doing? We know that we need them because we can't keep up with the day-to-day activities, but what could we do possibly in SAP or in our ERP system to make the process better? Is it a business process issue? Is it time? Is it, what is really causing the pain? So if you don't have a value statement, if you don't have a problem where you can say, I need to reduce temporary labor by 10%, where I have a group of people and a goal to meet, that you can use Knoa to help drive those dollars out. So I want to show here, where is temporary labor spent? And one of the things that, when you look at Knoa, one of the things you can do is we have what are called custom user attributes. And you can load attributes within your system to just mark employees, are they salary, hourly, or temporary? Now, when you deploy the agents, they're out on the desktop by username. I know which group which group they fit into. But I think very often we don't know. As an example here, my temporary laborers are struggling the most in the AO2, and I can see 705 errors for 35 people. So, of my 35 temporary employees, I have 705 errors being created by them. Do they need more training? Is there something I could do to help them? Obviously, the cost of them making errors is something that I can prevent. If I can make errors go away, the cost could possibly go away. So again, when you start thinking about dollars and driving those out of your organization, you really have to start looking at those areas where you can associate those hard dollars to the problem statement itself. So you can see here with the slice of the pie, I think for most organizations, it's not the majority of your staff are temporary employees. Normally it's about a third or maybe less, right? They're really there to supplement your full-time and hourly people. So you can see here where is my temporary group at? How many do I really have in my organization using SAP? That may be a question that you can't even answer right now. So for many of you that are listening right now, you might not even be able to say, I know I have temporary people using SAP. I have no idea what they're doing, what T codes they're in, how are they struggling, are they not struggling, are they getting the right training? You may not even know that information, and just focusing on this bucket, just focusing on temporary worker, think about the potential savings you could get for your company by focusing on something very simple. even if you didn't want to label your other employees hourly or salary, but you only wanted to label the temporary employees, you could still get to this data to understand what's going on in my temporary labor organization. As an example here, I also can see, who's having the problem. So where is the problem happening? What population is having the most problem? And now who's having those struggles? Who's costing me the most when I start to think about, I have a temporary labor, I'm paying them hourly, they're doing functions within the system, but who's struggling the most? That do I need to get them more training? How do I make them more efficient? Is there something they're doing that I could maybe automate or drive out that processing so that I can start to see that return on investment? So again, the way that I like to look at Knoa is Knoa is really about knowledge. So as you start to see and we go through the tool, Knoa is really an analytical tool. It's about reports. It's about having data to really drive decisions within your organization. So for the second part of this, identifying the data, again, I think what many companies struggle with is you don't have the data point currently. So if you have Knoa, you do have data. Sometimes maybe it's not categorized correctly, or maybe there's ways that I could make it more efficient. For some of you, you don't even have these data points. So I think some of the things that are interesting here is if you think about all the decisions that you're making within your organization, especially the ones around value, where you have goals that say reduce support by 20%, reduce temporary labor by 10%, drive down consultant spend by X amount of dollars. I think very often you don't have the data around what's the right place to start, where is the most potential for me as an organization to save money. So one of the things that I really like to focus on in this use case and story is when you start thinking about consultants, spot consultants that you have working with you on SAP enhancements, maybe a consultant, again, that's spending time to create work instructions with WPB or other solutions you may have. What you start to see here, again, provocative thought, is if I'm the CIO, the CFO, and I'm concerned about spend as on my consultants and that bucket of money, where are my consultants spending time? So this is an example here of, I have 9 consultants. I can see at the top, when I go into the tool, you'll see I can filter normally the 2-week period of time. So for a 2-week period of time in my production system, I see I had 9 consultants, and they worked about 153 hours in the system. So again, this may be valid. So you may have consultants that are not meant to be in SAP every day. But again, what I'm trying to show is there may be data points that you're missing to help drive some decisions around consultant spend. Is the time that you're being charged really the time that they're working in the system? Is the process that I want them to be showing people the process that I've told them to pass on to the user community? What is the consultant doing when they are troubleshooting or fixing problems? When they're developing or creating new functionality, because we all bring in consultants to help us as experts. What are they doing? So instead of having the consultant document everything, we could just put an agent on their machine and really capture, all of those things that they're doing in the dev system and testing. And after they're gone, I have a record of, what were all those things they were doing? What were the processes they went through in SAP to bring a better understanding to that consultant spend? Another thing that I always think is interesting is where are they spending their time? How much active time are we have? So out of the 9 consultants in this graph, you can see no more than 7 were using the system on a day-to-day basis. So it may have been a different 7 group of people, but not on any day did I have all 9 consultants working in the system consecutively at the same time. Again, maybe exactly why you hired the consultant, but a data point that may be missing from your solution when you're trying to say, I need to drive out spend on consulting. I don't know where to start. I don't know who my most effective consultants are. If I have concerns and I need to go to my consultant partner to talk to them about maybe some concerns, sometimes you don't have data points to even bring up with them on, here's where my concerns are. Here's some data to help you understand why I might have some concerns. And then looking at the hours per day. So how many hours are they spending within the system, over a period of time? Here I can see about 2 hours a day a consultant spending in SAP. If I had a consultant that was doing heavy configuration and they were my expert who was supposed to be in the system all day long, I may have concerns, right, where I need to ask questions. Is the consultant being pulled into meetings that maybe they shouldn't be pulled into? Why is the consultant only spending 2 hours in the system? Is it my people causing the problem, or is the consultant just not going into the system? So again, it gives you that value to really start looking at, is the spend that I have on my consultants validated and really, appropriate for the area of expertise that I'm paying for? So again, another area where I think Knoa can help provide value, but I think we sometimes overlook this use case. Again, Knoa with analytics, as you can see in the past, it's really the analytical approach, that data approach, to really drive value. On that specific use case we just talked about with consultants, one of the stories I like to share is one of the customers that we were doing a POC with very quickly identified some consultants that were not providing maybe the value that they expected. And for a CIO and a CFO and others in the organization, it really gave them a view into spend that they hadn't had in the past. Now, again, it's not showing you the dollars, but it is showing you the hours of time people are spending within the system. So driving change. So again, with data, you can really start to drive change and change the conversation from being a conversation about feelings and perception to really a conversation about data and value. So if you're being held accountable to drive value with this tool, to bring dollars out of the organization, you really have to be able to drive change. And one of the ways to drive change is using data to help you drive that change. So you really need to have data points to be able to help you have those conversations so that when you sit down, and let me use the temporary labor group or the consulting group, when you sit down with those groups of people, you have to have something to show, to say, this is why I have the concerns. This is where I think I can save money. This is why I need to automate a process. It really gives you some concrete data to be able to make some hard decisions within an organization to really drive some value. So one of the things around driving change I really like to talk about is around development costs. So every company that uses SAP has done custom work. I don't know of any customer that I've visited or anyone that I've talked to over the years of using SAP that haven't used V codes or created some type of custom transactions. I think what you'll see when you start to look at the data within Knoa, that where the most errors occur, where the response time, and when I say response time, system response time to the user processing the transaction is the slowest, is normally around the V codes. Also, if you think about the effort, right, how much cost do I have in the development of these T codes? So as a C-level, as a director, as someone in your organization, we may have, and I'm going to use this one as an example, VMGT21. I may have spent 6 to 8 months developing this custom T code. I now see that I only have 5 users in the system out of 400 that are possibly using this T code. So I have a way to go, why did I spend so much time developing custom work for only a few amount of people? Where are people struggling, and how much time is it taking to process? We're never surprised when we start to look at the data around V codes being the slowest within the system. And really, if you think about the reason why they would be the slowest, they tend to be transactions that you're grouping a lot of different functions together to provide one screen to do many things. So that sometimes tends to make it run slower. The other thing why it sometimes runs slower is, the people you have to do custom development are not the same group of people that SAP have. SAP has a group of people to optimize and make, T codes run as efficient as possible, where in your company you may have to focus on a development to fix a problem. We make it as efficient as possible, but we don't have really a way to drive better efficiency as we go through. So, and then really when you start to look at where are my custom T codes being used the most? So really when you start to look at justification, so maybe if you're looking at countries, so does U.S. have more customization than Germany? Does Germany use the customization more than U.S.? Does a city within the U.S., which city within the U.S. is using the most custom transaction codes? Where are we developing custom work the most? So when you really start thinking about cost, how much money am I spending on development for locations, for countries, for user groups? Why am I spending the money? After I spend the money, am I getting the value out of that investment into the development? So now I've invested money into the development. Am I really getting the return that I expected from the time and effort of maybe 3 developers or 4 developers to do this custom work? Again, data points that I don't think we always have, and what we tend to lead with is a feeling and a perception where we'll have conversations on the custom transactions not working for me, or I told the developers this is what I needed, but it's not what I really meant, or they developed this, but it doesn't work for me, or I developed this and it's creating a lot of problems for my users. Again, there's a lot of these questions that you can't answer that, again, all create costs within your organization because it's unclear, undefined feelings. I don't know if they're really true. I don't know which ones to take care of first. Again, another way to drive out costs. And again, if you start thinking about why, why are only one user using a transaction? So if I spent, $2,000 on average, sometimes up to $20,000 on custom work, to go in the system and start to see that only one person is using maybe a custom T code that you built that was maybe meant for 400, 500, 1,000 people, you really can start to say, did I really invest my money in the right place? And should I put in more controls and more effort to make sure that when we go put the effort in development and we go to spend the money, that we have a way to measure that people are using the investment that we've put into the tool. So again, one of the things that I like about this slide is Knoa equals ownership. One of the things that I think Knoa will start to drive is a cultural change within your company. If you start to think about having data to drive conversations, you're really going to start to have a different culture. And why I say different culture is now the business will have data points that they could pull themselves or as well as bring to the meeting and have conversations on. IT has data points that they can talk about, but it's a level playing field. So instead of it being IT is making decisions for the business, but they don't understand what we need, you start to get this view of IT sees the problem. They're making data-driven decisions. I understand why they're making those decisions. So it helps make that conversation a little bit more easy, as well as the business having data points to say, this is why I'm asking you to make the changes. This is where I'm struggling the most. This is why that T code, when I bring up is the slowest, I have data points to show you it's the slowest. It really, again, you're going to see a cultural change in the ownership of who owns the changes, who owns driving value, will really start to shift to be, it's an owned, right? The ownership is between the business and IT. It's not one, it's not the other, it's together combined. You really need that ownership of both groups need to own driving value. One group by itself cannot provide all the value possible that you're going to get out of using Knoa. So measuring the improvements. So one of the things that I've seen as I've gone around and looked at some of the other customers and from my past experience, when it comes to measuring improvements, I think a lot of us don't do this very well. We spend money, we put things in place, we get a spot consultant, we have a temporary laborer, we've done custom development, but we don't really measure, did it help us in any way? So when I got the temporary laborer, do my other employees now have the time that they needed to finish the task to get done for the reason why I hired the temporary laborer? Do I see that the spot consultant is providing the value and giving me the effort and value back to my organization? With development costs, are they using the tool? Do I see adoption of the new T code? Do I see them in there using it actively? We tend to do a poor job of measuring. We identify the problem. We very quickly solve it. We see that the temporary workers there, the consultants there, the development work's being done. But after it's completed, we don't really measure the value we received. So one of the things that I like about Knoa is there's ways that you can start to measure these improvements through business process, through, we have executive scorecards, which I'm going to show as well, that can start to provide some dollars itself. But we do a poor job of really measuring, is the improvement helping? Do I see any improvement to why I made the change? So what I like to point out here, this is a financial accounting process. So if you think about your month-end close, if you could shorten your close cycle, if I could make month-end close run more efficient, better, obviously I'm going to start to see more reaction to the results of my financial close, that I can adjust quicker within the month, which should start to drive profits up, right? If I can adjust productivity of a machine or efficiency of a distribution center within the first 3 days of a month instead of waiting to the 15th of the month, I can start to see those profits increase because we're making those decisions quicker because we can get through processes faster. So again, when I look at this financial accounting business process, where are my people spending the most time? Are they really getting the most value out of this business process? Who's in this business process the most? So when you start to think about, I want to make it better, what's causing pain, who's having the issues, sometimes we struggle with who do I need to talk to make a process better. Knoa can really start to identify who those people are. Also, where are the most users occurring? So I always think this is interesting, clearing the GL. Very often what you see in the month-end close process, it's not your accountants or the people that are at their desk every day doing the month-end close process that slows the month-end close process down. It's really all the dependencies around month-end close. So it's a GL entry that they're waiting for a C level or a director to approve because the amount's too high. So until that's approved, they can't move on. It's a cycle count that needs to be done in a location that's not posted, that they don't have control over, but they have to push people to do something before they can move on. So what I see a lot in a month-end close process is it's a stop-and-go behavior that's sometimes very hard to see where the value would be for development, for spot consultants, for temporary laborers to help drive improvements. So really, how many errors am I having? How much is that costing me through the month-end close process? So if I had a scorecard that I really could measure, this is not step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm measuring how long are they in the system, how many errors are they getting, who is the most active. If I could have a more focused view on this, I could start to drive improvements to say, I'm going to challenge the financial group to go from a 15-day close to a 12-day close. And then from a 12-day close to a 7-day close, because we're going to start to focus on what's stopping them, what's getting in their way, what's erring out, what's the modules that are creating the most problems for them, so that we can get to root cause, so that we can make this a very efficient process to really drive down that close window. I've seen examples of this where they've gone from a 15-day close to using the tool to drive down to a 7-day close, to then make some decisions, because now I have some data to say, does Simple Finance on HANA, Simple Finance with HANA and Fiori, does this make sense? Because now I have data to say I've done everything I can do to make it as best as I can in ECC. What's the next change, SAP, right? And SAP is going to say, have you thought about Simple Finance? And then I can now measure, right, as a Simple Finance process from the 7 days, do I get to 2 days? And if I get to the 2 days, I have a way to measure that improvement. So really, Knoa is about adoption, right? I can measure the adoption. I can make sure people are using the tool. Again, I have a way to measure, are they moving from where they're at, and are we making improvements? So reporting on the value. Again, I talked a little bit a second ago about the executive dashboards and executive scorecards. So really, when you start to think about the value, very often, right, if you have a CFO, a CIO, they want to see, right, a very high-level view. They want to know the value we're providing. They want to see data. They want data points. They want the cost and the value explained to them, within 5 to 10 minutes, not 3 hours of a presentation to describe why it made sense. Are we getting a return? Do we see the dollars back? So reporting on value, I think, is sometimes very difficult in the ERP system. So when you think about SAP, I think everyone who's implemented SAP I know from my past experience, we invested millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars into SAP. And with those hundreds of millions of dollars, I think most companies struggle with how much is the investment saving me? What is my ROI back from SAP? I think we have soft numbers where we can show business process improvement. We can show maybe some user satisfaction. We can show month-end close maybe is faster, but we sometimes struggle to show dollars. So one of the things that I like about the Knoa solution itself on reporting value, and again, this is Impact of Change Executive Scorecard, you can start to get a view into the system, and I have approved purchase orders here as the example. So as I start to point out, so from an adoption point of view, how much am I gaining from active users? So from week over week, 2-week period, how many people am I getting to use the system? Am I getting the dollars back? So you can see, from an early adoption, I can start to see I'm starting to get some money back. And the way that it's looking at this is active time versus how many people are in the system, right? If I have a lot of people in the system and they're active and they're engaged and they're adopting a new process, I'm going to get some return on that investment that I have within the system. When you think about work interruptions, so all of those clicks or errors that are happening, how many of those are happening across the organization or even in a specific business process, so here in purchase orders. So I can see the number of user errors is right around 1,800 user errors. So, those work interruptions, when I take the time it takes for them to process through the interruption, how many times it's popping up on the screen, times an average hourly rate, I can start to see how much money I'm losing by people interacting with what I would call an interruption. And, I had a coworker who brought up this example that I really liked, and it's when you think about a work interruption, it's really one of those things that, if you think about as a child coming up to their mom and saying, Mom, I need help, Mom, I need help, Mom, I need help, after a while it gets annoying. And that's kind of the same thing here, right? These work interruptions are annoying to the end user, but as well cost you money. And I think very often we lose sight of, well, it's just all they have to do is click enter, or all they have to do is click the green check. But if they have to do that 1,000 times a day, that's a lot of time that they're wasting just hitting the enter key extra or hitting a green check extra, which in turn ends up being hours and hours of time on something as easy as I hit enter 100 times through this transaction. How can I get rid of that process? And then looking at response time. So, operations are clicks or, operations are enters or saves. So if you really start to think about operations, I really like to use the click mentality. So if you have a mouse click, so every time I'm clicking on the screen to do something, here I can see maybe the development I just did on this process didn't reduce the clicks that I thought it was going to. So I wanted people to not click as much on the screen, but I can see there's still 85,000 clicks over this time period. So again, from this scorecard, I may need to look at that investment to say, did I optimize this correctly? Are people trained correctly? Do I need to do something differently? Is the screen layout need to change? I would expect my green dollars or the dollars I'm getting back from this investment to be higher than 400, and that I'm not losing $11,000 within 2 weeks because of poor development or poor effort. These are things that I think many people don't have. You don't have that view into the value around these processes and process improvement. So again, there's more than one of these executive scorecards. This is just an example of one. The nice thing, and I'll show you this when we go over the system, is each one of these tiles is configurable where you can go in and you can change different values. You can put in yourself up here. There is a pencil up here as well, where I can change the hourly rate. I can change what it's looking at to really make this scorecard make sense. So if you present it to someone, if you would go to a C-level and they're like, this doesn't make sense to me, I don't believe this, how are you getting to the calculation? You can actually click on a button and it'll show how the calculation is being derived. So very powerful when you're trying to convey impact of change, convey adoption or investment is worthwhile. Again, these are the types of things that are going to help you drive that value using Knoa and really drive value within your organization. So high level, how does Knoa work? So Knoa is a desktop agent, so it's really understanding the user's experience. The agent is installed on a desktop or environment that they're going to interact with SAP. So it's not installed on the technical back end. It's not a basis solution. It's not installed on any of the SAP systems. It's a front end monitor that's really looking at the user's experience. So if you think about an SAP, basis is going to give you the view of a technical response. So the time that it takes for the system to record something in a database, that's what you're going to see on the basis side. Knoa is going to give you the view of the time it took to record it in the database as well as the view back to the screen. So sometimes what we miss in current data set is I see the response time of my system. I don't see how long it took for my person who works in Shanghai to get this data back on their screen. That's the view that Knoa gives you. So it gives you more of a user view, a user's feeling of what's happening. So sometimes the technical view looks okay. The user view still may be impacted by maybe another problem that's existing. We also have a database and application server. So we have the agent. It's going to communicate to the database. Database, we can use Oracle or SQL. The application server is there for configuration. So if you think about all of that data that's coming in, how do you want to filter it? Who's your user groups? There's user attributes that I talked a little bit about. The application server is really there for really configuration, and the database is to collect and hold that information. And then the last part is we leverage BO or business objects for reports. So we have that SQL or Oracle database, and we're not going to go build a BW We're going to ETL to create our dashboard or aggregate views. We're going to go into business objects to look at the dashboards of those aggregates, and we will see the data, but it's actually pulling it from our SQL or Oracle database. It's not pulling it from a BW warehouse. So a little bit different when you think about the business object architecture, but obviously it works really well. I'll show you how that happens here in a second. So some high-value use cases. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail. I just want to show these. These are kind of the typical things. I think if any of you have heard the Knoa story or you've been on other phone calls, even with myself, I know from the past I posted many of these. Very often we focus on help desk and help desk ticket reduction. Again, I'm trying to bring up other value use cases that I've seen from other customers that I think are a little bit more thought-provoking and maybe things you haven't thought about. So hopefully from what you heard and what you've seen, there's something in there that you can grab onto to say, you know what, I never thought about looking at my temporary laborers. I've never thought about maybe looking at consultant spend. I never thought about focusing on development costs. If you're struggling with, I need to get value out of the tool, again, the most important piece of this, you have to have a problem that dollars are associated to. So if all you have is someone saying, I need you to show me the dollars out of the tool, you need to ask the question, where are we trying to save money? Or do we need to reduce tickets? Do we need to reduce temporary labor, consultant spend? Are we trying to improve change management? You have to have something where there's dollars associated. Okay, so I'm going to jump over into the system here very quickly. I'm not going to spend a lot of time in the system itself. If you have questions, like I said, you can type them into the chat window itself, and we will answer those as I jump over here to the internet. Okay, so you should be able to see my desktop now and see the internet itself here. So what I want to show is this is the application activity dashboard. You can see here, again, it's interactive. Really what I like to talk about here from a value use case, driving dollars again, is very simplistic with this view. I can start to go, maybe I deployed Knoa to 400 computers. I only see 345 within this range logging in and actively using SAP. Is that okay? How many licenses am I paying for? How many unlimited licenses do I have? Am I over licensed? So just very quickly, I can start to go, is my licensing okay? One thing that, is brought up often from Basis or from other people who use Solution Manager, and I used Solution Manager in the past, you can get the view of how many people are logging in, and I can see if they're using my license. What we would sometimes find in our system is people log in to keep their login active. They don't actually log in and do anything, but they log in one day out of the month to make sure they don't lose access, but they're not actually transacting or doing anything in the system. Again, I'm starting to get a view of what people are really doing. How many active users do I really have on a day-to-day basis? So in Knoa itself, applications are going to be your modules or your system. So like UAT, QA, prod, dev, CRM, you're going to see the different applications. Modules really go to T codes. So if you think about modules, those are going to be your T codes or what's in classic ECC or GUI. And then screens are really going to be the view for CRM, for any of those web-based applications that really don't have T codes or transactional usage. I can start to look at things by screen. So again, I can look at that data very differently through the different slices here. Now, I'm going to go jump over into the error profile dashboard itself because I want to show this temporary labor example that we have to go through. So I'm going to click here on the error profile dashboard. As we're waiting for this to load, some of the things that you'll see is user attributes, again, is something that's customizable. You can load up to, I believe it's 20 plus custom attributes. And what you're going to see up here, this is the attribute filter. And what I can do from the screen is I can select different types of filters. So right now I'm looking at city, but what I want to go look at is I've loaded in temporary labor as employee type. So I'm going to go pull up my attribute called employee type. And what you can see is now I see hourly, temporary, and salary. So I can see errors that are occurring. And I'm going to show you how I can filter all of this information by temporary employees. But what I want to show is about 18% of my employees are temporary people that I'm looking at right now that are using SAP. If I click on this slice, I can see there's 61 temporary employees using SAP. But I also can see which of the temporary laborers are maybe struggling the most. So I could start to click on their name to see more information. I could look at trends to also see trend lines of where is my temporary laborers errors with, users with errors, where is that occurring the most. I can start to see different information here. Now, what I like to do is show this as well, is that you can filter the information. So I'm going to go in here and filter real quickly on a user attribute. So you can see here my user attributes. I'm going to choose the employee type, and I'm going to choose temporary. So the view that I get on the screen prior is only a temporary view. So I'm going to click on temp, and I'm going to click apply. I'm going to go run. So what you'll see here is now if I'm trying to provide value around temporary work, I only am looking at temporary laborers right now, and I can start to see, how many I have, what T codes are they in, what modules are they using, to really have a view. So, if I was looking at CRM or maybe let's look at VAO2, I want to understand VAO2, where are these workers? Now, since I have employee type already filtered out, maybe I want to go back to the city to see where do I have the most temporary employees located for VAO2. So it looks like I have a couple listed. Let's see, I have 8 here. I'm going to go click on this 8. So now when I go look at FV50, I can see the different locations and how many temporary workers again. I can start to click on the pie to see, who may need help. And again, I can go one more layer. So here I can click on Harper Lee. I can see 51 errors, and I can start to click. And I like to think of Knoa as a way you're peeling away at the onion. I'm starting at a high-level dashboard. I'm peeling away at the onion to look at the raw message, and I can keep peeling back at this data to really start to understand, what's going on. So here it says a GL account is not relevant to a tax code, enter valid date. So it looks like some issues with some cost centers in GL. I can then click on one more layer and go into now a point-click view of what are they doing before and after. So did they try the same error over and over and over again? What am I seeing? That I can start to say, maybe this is a training issue, right? So if I start to see someone trying the same thing, like this is an example, cost center doesn't exist, cost center doesn't exist. They're trying the same thing over and over again. To me, this is a training issue. Now I've identified a temporary labor that may need some more training to make them more efficient so that they're not wasting time, trying to get through things that maybe someone didn't spend enough time training them to begin with. But again, identifying ways that I can make sure I'm getting the most out of that asset, the most out of a temporary labor and value for my organization itself. So I'm going to jump back over into this dashboard here. The other thing I like to bring up is messages. So again, I'm still filtered on temp. I'm going to filter again on temporary labor. You can see the selection went back to all. I'm going to go select temp again. I'm going to hit apply and hit run. And when I look now at my messages, these are all the error messages that my temporary people are getting. So now I can see, okay, I like this one, right? Name or password is incorrect. So they're having issues logging in. That's normal, right? I think everyone can say we experience that across user population, that you can start to see. Users don't have the right information. So this starts to give me a group of the error messages. I can then also create message groups where now I can group things together to say, how many are authorization issues? What are my sales and distribution problems? What are my purchase order errors? So I can really start to look at errors in different ways. So that's one view that we have there. We have about 10 minutes left. I'm going to jump over into another view. Devin, did we have any questions from anyone that we needed to answer? I didn't see any popping up.
There have not been any questions, so just remind people, if you have any questions, please type them in the chat box.
Perfect. So I'm going to go jump into one more dashboard to show this real quick. So user response time profile. So again, when you're looking at value along where am I spending the most money, what should I go look at to fix first, second, third? Response time is something that sometimes is missed. So where are my users having the longest time to wait for screens to return back? So when this comes up here, I'll show you an example of this. So I'm going to look at operations, but I want to go to a population of high user groups here. So MV51, obviously we know MV51 is more of a display transaction, but I can see it's taking about 8 seconds, to respond. And I see 1,234 operations or clicks within that. So if I start to think for all these clicks, right, 1,234 clicks, on average it's taking 8 seconds for the screen to respond. You can start to very quickly see how much time are my people wasting in MV51 just waiting for the screen to come back with results. So with reporting, and we see this a lot with reporting, do they know how to filter correctly? Is there something I could do with the variant within their user profile so that it always defaults the correct information so that they're not filtering a large date range so that the data comes back quicker? The next thing we have is the dashboard that I want to show on the cost itself. But again, you start to see the different items on response time here. So I wanted to show executive dashboards as well. So I'm going to go jump over here to the executive dashboards. Okay, so I'm going to go jump over, and you can see, right, this is a normal BI folder structure. I'm going to go look at my Knoa executive dashboards and look at impact of change and pull this one up real quick. So it looks like we did have one question, and it was, we were talking about consultants' time in Knoa. It says, so Knoa is connected to non-production clients as well, and the answer is yes. So basically the way that Knoa works is when the agent gets installed, the agent's going to monitor any system that you want to monitor. So when you think about SAP, there's many different systems that people go into. So Kumar, for your question, it does. It can monitor dev, QA, prod, test, sandbox. And again, if you think about some of the things that I think consultants do often, right? You're developing something new for a client. Are my users going into the sandbox and testing it before it goes live? Or did they do UAT? Are they playing with it before we turn the system on? We want to know that they're playing in the system, because if they're not playing in the system on day one, they're not going to know what they're doing. So again, yes, it can monitor more than just production. It can monitor test, QA, dev, prod, SRM, CRM, different systems. So absolutely, it can monitor more than just those single locations. So some of the things that I want to show is the calculation itself. So this is an example of where this calculation is being derived from. So I can see daily expected business value, what's my hourly rate. So, we may say, wow, this is high, but maybe for a consultant, this is not high. So maybe we want to say it's only $21, $21.50 an hour. And I can change, by closing out, I've made a change. Now I'm going to go filter this data so that I can pull some information up. I'm going to go back to 2012, so I have a big circle of information. And you can see by me changing that value, right now I'm looking at all business processes. I start to get a view. And what I liked about the impact of change, it gives me some high-level bullet points at the bottom as well as some costs. And again, you can see the ease of changing this from, $21.50 an hour. Maybe I say, well, actually, I want to do an average rate of $35 an hour. What does that change my view to? As well as down here, I can change what's my acceptable, what's the attribute, am I using department? Maybe I want to use training type or manager. I can change the view of what I'm looking for. So you'll see bullet points come on and off based on what I'm selecting on the screen. So again, you can see the ease of getting some value out of these executive dashboards here. Okay, so we are about a few minutes left. I'm going to leave it open for any other questions. I want to jump back over to my presentation if anyone had any other questions. So no, I don't see any other questions right now. So next step, so really what I want to make sure is, if you're thinking about using Knoa, if you're struggling with how do I get value out of the system, really ask for help to understand where value could be gained. I think all of you in the SAP world, you have an EE, someone who is your education enablement, your education person, your account executive. There's people at SAP you can reach out to and ask for help. You can also reach out to Knoa to ask for help, and you'll see some contact information here afterwards. But again, ask for help to understand. If you have a business problem with dollars associated, I can almost guarantee you that there is a data point within Knoa that will help you see the value. Really what we lack often is I don't have a problem statement where value is associated. If you have one of those now and you're going, I don't know how to prove value, I would urge you to reach out to really, ask for some help. Pilot the solution. So if you're not sure about the solution, pilot it. Get it installed on some machines. Let us help you show some value so that you can really start to make people understand why analytics are so important. Identify those areas to drive value. Really develop your calculation on how am I going to look at user performance and adoption and what is those costs. And the last thing but not least, understand the cost of doing nothing. If I do absolutely nothing about this, from my perspective, I'm not really losing anything. But if you start to think about all those buckets that I showed today, how much cost are you losing? How much cost is being left on the table that I'm doing nothing about, that I'm not even aware of because I haven't even looked at the data to really point anything out. So this presentation will be posted. Here's some information for some other areas. And I don't believe we had any other questions. So if you had any other questions, a few ways to reach out to me. You can see my email address is there, jburnell@knoa.com. You can also tweet me on Twitter at JesseBurnell79. Again, connect that way. Devin will be posting this information out, sending an email with a link to get to this. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. But again, thank you for your time. I know we've had about an hour together. Hopefully you've had one new thought about how Knoa could help me provide value, or one way that maybe you haven't thought about maybe value that you were leaving on the table. So again, thank you for your time. Again, if you have any questions, my contact information is on the screen.